No one expected the courtroom to erupt that morning. Judge Judy, usually in command, feared, respected, sat quietly, adjusting her glasses as if she sensed a storm forming long before the first thunderclap hit. And then, without warning, it began. A loud, heavy-breathing woman in a wrinkled floral top stood, slammed her hand on the desk, and pointed straight at Judy like an executioner announcing a sentence. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. You think you're untouchable, she barked, voice trembling with fury. You stole my husband. You destroyed my marriage. The audience froze. Some laughed under their breath, assuming she was joking. But her face, red, swollen, boiling with emotional poison, made it clear, she believed every word. And in that moment, something shifted in the room. Judge Judy, the lion of this courtroom jungle, suddenly looked small. Like someone who didn't even see the bullet coming. Judy blinked once. Twice. No witty comeback. No smirk. Just surprise. It was the first time in years anyone had seen her rattled. The whispers spread fast, like gasoline touched by flame. A college kid in the second row whispered, "Is she serious?" while another leaned forward, eyes wide, hungry for chaos. The husband in question sat hunched, hands wringing nervously, eyes darting like a teenager caught cheating on an exam. Karen's voice rose even higher, chest heaving with dramatic breaths. He left me, because this woman, this judge, seduced him with power, flattery, and attention. That's how she steals men. She pretends to be righteous, but she's a predator. Gasps. Phones lifted. Cameras zoomed. And for the first time, Judy didn't interrupt. She swallowed, steadying herself. She wasn't the fierce lion today. She was the one under attack, outnumbered, blindsided, and cornered by a woman determined to humiliate her. This wasn't just disrespect, it was assault disguised as heartbreak. And yet, beneath Judy's calm exterior, beneath that slight tremble in her voice when she finally spoke, there was something else. Not anger. Not fear. Something colder. Sharper. The quiet confidence of someone holding a truth so powerful it could shatter every lie with a single push. Are you finished? Judy asked softly, voice controlled but not yet commanding. The crowd leaned in. Karen smirked, she thought she had already won. Thought the silence meant guilt. Thought the trembling meant weakness. But Judy wasn't trembling from fear. She was trembling from restraint. Because hidden in her chambers, and no one else knew this yet, sat a stack of printed screenshots. Screenshots that didn't just prove Karen's husband didn't love Judy. They proved something far more explosive. And Karen, in her rage, had just opened the door for Judy to walk right through and burn the lies to ash. But Judy didn't reveal it. Not yet. She simply looked at Karen, and smiled. A quiet, dangerous, just wait kind of smile. The courtroom smelled the shift before they saw it. Something big was coming. Something that would flip humiliation into justice in less than a minute. 47 seconds, that's all it would take. And everyone in that room, even Karen, had no idea how close they were to the truth that would destroy her entire act and expose the real reason her husband left. If you're still with me right now, comment, "Truth always wins," below. Your engagement helps stories like this reach more people who believe in dignity over drama. Judge Judy sat still, her hands gently folded, as if she were holding something fragile inside her palms, not anger, not revenge, but patience. That patience made the moment sting sharper, because the courtroom expected fire and fury, and instead saw a woman swallowing pride in silence. To many, it looked like she'd been pierced. Wounded. Momentarily dethroned. The audience didn't know whether to pity her or fear her. But Karen, swollen with self-righteousness, mistook it as victory. I knew it, Karen hissed loudly, scanning the room for validation. Look at her. Guilty face. Everyone sees it. She won't even deny it. Because she knows I caught her. Caught her. The word slithered like cheap perfume, sweet and ugly at the same time. Judy merely lifted her gaze, not yet returning fire. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't chasing control. She was letting Karen build her own stage of ropes and nails. Because some people don't need their enemies punished, they simply need them enough rope to tie themselves up in front of everyone. I was a loyal wife, Karen continued, clutching her chest dramatically. I cooked, I cleaned, I dieted. I did everything right. And then you just swooped in with your fancy robe, your authority, your fake wisdom, and convinced my husband he deserved better. You manipulated him. An older woman in the back shook her head with disbelief. Another whispered, "Oh honey, that's not how marriage works." But Karen wasn't hearing reality, she was drowning in her own script, playing hero and victim at once, desperate for applause from people who only stared in awkward confusion. Even her husband's posture screamed exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that grows from years of dragging someone through their own drama. Judge Judy inhaled slowly, her voice soft as silk. Are you finished now? Karen seized on the hesitation, mistaking poise for fear once again. No. I'm not finished. You ruined our life. You took my husband from me. You belittled me. You think you're better than me because you're on a TV show. For the first time, Judy blinked, slow, deep, controlled, like a woman forcing down something heavy. This wasn't the Judy the world knew. Instead of striking, she absorbed. Instead of attacking, she endured. And the crowd could feel it, the loneliness of being falsely accused, the ache of being insulted publicly, the sting of dignity tested. Karen leaned forward, voice shaking with hypocrisy. You think you're so powerful. You don't scare me. You've had everything handed to you. Fame. Respect. Influence. And what about me? What about the woman who tried her whole life and still got abandoned? You stole him. There it was, the real wound. Not about Judy. Not about the husband. About failure. Karen wasn't fighting Judy. She was fighting her own insecurities, her own fear of not being enough. Judy saw that. Everyone saw that. But Karen was blind. Pride has a way of blinding the loudest people the fastest. Judy's voice finally came, quiet and almost fragile. I did not steal your husband. It wasn't a clapback. It wasn't a punchline. It was just truth, delivered tenderly, and that gentleness disarmed the room. This wasn't the roaring judge slamming fools into silence. This was a woman defending her name, not with strength, yet, but with raw sincerity. For a moment, the audience felt protective. For a moment, they wondered if maybe Judy wasn't the giant here, maybe she was the one facing the giant. Karen wasn't satisfied. That's a lie. The word shot out like a bullet. You did. He told me. He said you made him feel appreciated, respected, admired. Men don't leave wives for no reason. He never complained before he started watching you. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter broke through the room. Someone whispered. She's blaming a TV show for her marriage. Karen ignored it. Her voice cracked, rage spilling from pain disguised as certainty. He was mine. And you ruined him. Judy didn't raise her voice. Didn't strike back. Her tone stayed humble, steady, as if she were performing a surgery on the truth, layer by careful layer. You believe losing control means someone took it from you, she said softly. But sometimes people leave when someone else stops listening. Karen's face froze. Her body stiffened. For a second, one fleeting second, her eyes flickered with something human, fear. Not of Judy. But of reality. Truth threatens delusion like sunlight threatens rot. And Karen felt it, the room tilting away from her, sympathy evaporating. Still, she pushed forward, louder, more frantic, because pride never dies quietly. Don't twist this. You manipulated him. You think you're the hero? You're not. You're a fraud. A lonely old woman who needs someone else's husband to feel powerful. Judy's jaw clenched, not in rage, but in sorrow. Sorrow for a woman who didn't realize she wasn't fighting for love. She was fighting for ego, territory, and an illusion she built brick by brick around insecurity. The husband finally spoke, voice trembling. Karen, stop. But Karen didn't hear him, she heard only her ego pounding drums of war. No, you be quiet. You're happy she brainwashed you. I don't even know who you are anymore. Judy leaned forward slightly, not to tower, but to meet her at eye level, as one human acknowledging another's pain. You don't lose a loyal partner to me, ma'am. You lose them to your own refusal to see where the cracks began. Karen shook, not from sadness, but fury at the truth. So you admit it. You helped him leave me? No, Judy said. I helped him see himself. Dead silence. No gavel. Just gravity. Judy didn't look like a warrior then, she looked like a woman who understood hurt. And that made her more dangerous than any shout ever could. A leader not by dominance, but by calm conviction. Everyone waited breathlessly for Karen's next explosion. But something else happened instead. Judy lifted a small envelope, tapping it once on the bench. Not a threat. Not a declaration. A promise. You believe accusation equals truth, she whispered. In a moment, we will see if evidence still matters. Karen scoffed, loud, mocking, confident. Evidence? There is no evidence. Judy's voice lowered to almost a whisper. That is what you should fear. And in that instant, the underdog didn't look weak anymore. She looked patient. Prepared. And dangerous in her silence. The storm wasn't over. It was just inhaling. Silence crawled across the courtroom like a slow-moving storm. It wasn't loud, it wasn't explosive, it was suffocating. Everyone felt it, even the ones pretending not to breathe. Karen stood there panting, face red, lips trembling with that dangerous mix of anger and desperation. She wasn't fighting Judy anymore, she was fighting reality, and reality doesn't lose, but it makes you bleed before it wins. The husband sat hunched, shoulders collapsed like a house that finally gave up on holding the roof. He didn't dare interrupt again. He knew, and everyone could see it, this wasn't a woman defending love. This was a woman defending control. And people who build love from control always end up shocked when control fails. Karen crossed her arms and lifted her chin. Go on, Judge, she spat. Show everyone your evidence. Show everyone how you stole him with your fancy words. Judy blinked once, the kind of blink that belongs to people who have controlled bigger storms than this. But she didn't open the envelope. Not yet. Instead, she leaned back slightly. The subtle body language didn't scream power, it whispered it. A whisper always hits harder when rage has already filled the room. Before we talk about evidence, Judy said calmly, we talk about truth. Because you cannot understand one without facing the other. Karen laughed, that forced, bitter laugh people use when pretending they're not terrified. Oh please. Don't act holy. You think just because you sit there in your robe you're better than me? You don't know what I've been through. You don't know how much I gave. He was mine. I built our life. I sacrificed everything. A woman in the audience whispered, sacrifice isn't love if you weaponize it. Her friend nodded quietly. Judy didn't respond to the insult. She responded to the pain. That's what cut deeper. Tell me, Judy said softly. When did sacrifice become a scoreboard? Karen froze. Not physically. Physically she became even more dramatic, arms flailing, but internally. That hit something raw. What are you even talking about? She snapped. I worked, I cooked, I cleaned. And did you love? Judy interrupted gently, or did you keep receipts? You could feel the word slice. Not sharp like knives, sharp like honesty. Honesty always stabs slower but goes deeper than steel ever could. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like someone unplugged her mid-sentence. The room leaned forward, absorbing every syllable, every ounce of electricity in the air. You want us to believe your marriage ended because I spoke to your husband, Judy went on. But marriages don't end from one conversation. They end from 1,000 small ones, ignored, dismissed, dismissed again. The husband flinched slightly, as if every quiet truth her voice carried landed on his chest like bricks he'd been hiding under for years. Karen shook her head hard, hair swinging. No. No. He never complained. He never said one word to me about being unhappy. And then you show up and suddenly he's finding himself. He never had problems until you got into his head. Judy tilted her head a fraction. Or perhaps he never had permission to speak until somebody finally listened. The husband's breath caught, as if someone read the diary he never wrote. Karen's voice cracked. So you admit it. Judy didn't lift her voice. She didn't give Karen that satisfaction. Calm power always humiliates louder than rage ever could. I admit, she said, that sometimes men, and women, stay quiet not because everything is fine, but because every time they speak, they're punished for not saying what someone wanted to hear. Karen's face changed in one heartbeat. All the anger, all the dominance, all the fake strength, gone. What replaced it wasn't humility. It was fear. Because she wasn't losing to Judy, she was losing to the mirror she refused to look into. You think I punished him? She whispered, voice shaking. You think I ruined things? Judy softened, not out of sympathy, but something rarer. Recognition. Ma'am, hurt rarely screams. It usually sighs. And if you only hear screams, you may miss every sigh until the person holding them walks away. The room went quiet again, but this time it wasn't tension, it was realization. A room of strangers felt a truth they had lived in their own worlds. Marriage counselors didn't speak this plainly. Therapists didn't cut this cleanly. Only life did, when it finally got tired of being ignored. Karen's eyes watered, but not from sadness, from humiliation disguised as heartbreak. You don't know me. You don't know what he did to me. Judy's tone remained steady. Maybe he did nothing to you. Maybe he just stopped letting you do everything to him. A whisper of, wow, went through the crowd. For the first time, Karen looked at her husband not as a possession, but as a person who might actually leave. Not because someone took him, but because she never allowed him to be anything but hers. And then Judy did something unexpected, she didn't strike. She didn't show the evidence. She let the silence judge first, because silence is harsher than any rule book. Finally, the husband spoke, voice fragile, like someone learning to stand after years on knees. I didn't leave you for her, he murmured. I left so I could breathe. Karen's head snapped toward him, betrayal splashing across her face. Breathe? I gave you everything. You gave me orders, he whispered. Not partnership. That single sentence landed heavier than a gavel ever could. Karen looked shattered, not broken by Judy, but by the truth she couldn't escape anymore. She opened her mouth to fight back, to scream, to reclaim control, but Judy lifted a hand gently. And now, she said, picking up the envelope, voice carrying quiet thunder, since we are done rewriting history, we can begin showing it. Karen staggered backward half a step, one foot betraying her before pride recovered. What do you mean? Judy slid the envelope across the bench with the gentleness of someone placing a rose on a coffin. You wanted proof, she said. And I always bring receipts. The audience stirred with electricity again. Karen swallowed hard, suddenly aware the battlefield she thought she owned was a cliff she'd been walking backward toward the whole time. This wasn't noise anymore. This was truth preparing to speak louder than she ever could. And the worst part? Judy hadn't even opened the envelope yet. The most dangerous warriors are the ones who don't need to swing to win, they simply reveal what already existed. And in 47 seconds, the world would know exactly why he left. Karen's breathing turned shallow, the kind of breath a person takes when the world starts shrinking around them. Her bravado wasn't gone, but it was cracking. And cracks make louder noise than walls ever do. She tried to laugh again, but this time it didn't echo. It just trembled and fell flat. Oh please, she scoffed weakly, though her voice quivered. Everyone knows you just like embarrassing people. You want to show off. Go ahead. But none of this changes the fact you turned him against me. Judy didn't answer. She didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She simply rested her fingertips on the envelope as if it were nothing more than a napkin. That nonchalance. It burned hotter than anger ever could. When people feel abandoned, Judy finally said, voice calm and patient, they often confuse being left with being stolen. But a person is not property. Your husband didn't belong to you, he chose you. And somewhere along the way. She paused, letting the silence tighten like a knot. He stopped feeling chosen in return. The room didn't breathe. Not the audience, not the husband, not even the cameras. Because sometimes the quiet becomes a knife, and every truth slices someone open. Karen's eyes grew glassy, but pride kept the tears chained behind fury. You're twisting things. He was happy. He told everyone he was happy. People whisper truth to strangers, Judy replied softly, when they're tired of pretending in their own home. The husband lowered his head, shame and relief fighting across his face. Karen looked at him, desperation bleeding through her posture. Tell her she's wrong, she demanded. Tell her you never said anything like that. But he didn't speak. Silence was his confession. Karen's throat worked as she swallowed, voice trembling now in panic, not rage. He just got confused. You confused him. You fed him lies. Judy shook her head lightly. Ma'am, I didn't feed him anything. I only asked him questions he had been afraid to ask himself. Karen's voice shrank into a whisper, brittle and dangerous. Questions like what? Judy leaned ever so slightly forward, not predatory, reflective. Like whether being loved should feel like walking on glass, or walking on solid ground. The audience murmured again, some eyes shifting toward Karen with pity, others with judgment. Because when someone fights this hard to keep a story alive, it usually isn't for love, it's for ego's survival. Karen's chin trembled. You think you're so wise. You think you know my marriage better than me? No, Judy answered. I think you forgot you were in one. The blow didn't land like a punch. It landed like a truth someone already knew but never wanted to hear. Karen's bravado shattered then. Her face flushed a deep, painful red. Pride collapsed into raw vulnerability, the kind that still tries to roar even when it has no voice left. You can't make him choose you, Judy continued, voice soft, unthreatening, yet unshakable. You can only hope he still wants to. Karen blinked hard, a tear finally slipping, not gentle, not graceful, but angrily, as if even her tears refused to show weakness. And now, Judy said, fingers sliding the envelope closer, we will let truth speak. Karen's breath hitched. What's in there? Words, Judy replied. Not mine. Not yours. His. Karen stiffened. Her voice turned tiny. His, messages. Judy nodded once. Messages written long before today. Long before this courtroom. Words spoken when there was no audience to impress and no enemy to blame. Karen stumbled a half-step backward as if struck. The room felt colder. Reality, heavy as stone, pressed against her. "I thought," her voice cracked, "I thought we were fine." Judy's expression softened again, not in triumph, but in understanding. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the loudest denial lives in the quietest lives." Karen shook her head slowly, tears now falling freely. "He never told me he was unhappy." The husband looked up, eyes wet. "Karen, every time I tried, you said I was ungrateful." Her breath broke. "I thought, motivating you, was love." "Motivation without mercy," Judy replied gently, "is pressure. And pressure breaks people before it builds them." Karen's legs seemed to weaken, her chest rising in uneven gasps. She looked less like a villain now, and more like a woman staring at a truth too large to fight. Judy lifted the envelope at last, not triumphantly, not cruelly, but firmly, like handing over the final page of a book someone refused to finish reading. "Shall we?" she asked softly. Karen didn't answer. She couldn't. Because deep down, she already knew. Nothing inside that envelope would tell her something she didn't already suspect. It would only confirm what she spent years pretending wasn't true. And that was the fear swallowing her whole. Time did not move when Judge Judy opened that envelope, it shifted. It stretched, like the universe itself paused to witness what happens when arrogance meets truth in a room full of witnesses. Karen stood frozen, hands clenched so tightly the knuckles turned ghost white, tears streaking in stubborn lines down cheeks that had spent years practicing superiority instead of softness. The moment Judy slid the first paper out, Karen's voice cracked like old wood under pressure. "Don't. Please don't." It wasn't a command anymore. It was a plea. It was the voice of someone who finally realized the punch she thought she was throwing was boomeranging. Judy didn't smirk. She didn't savor revenge. Her face carried something quieter, the solemn duty of truth. She held the first printed message lightly, almost delicately, as if handling someone's broken heart with gloved hands. She read slowly. "I don't feel seen anymore. I feel like a paycheck, not a partner." A collective inhale from the courtroom. A weight falling into everyone's stomach. The husband lowered his head again, shame and relief fighting inside him like two tired soldiers. Karen pressed a hand to her chest, as if the word struck physically. Judy lifted the second page. "I want to leave, but I'm scared she'll destroy me if I do." Gasps, real ones. No drama, no theatrics, just raw human reaction to pain spoken in ink. Judy's voice didn't shake. It didn't gloat. It simply held the truth like a lantern in a dark cave. Calm. Controlled. Devastating. Karen shook her head violently. He didn't mean that, he was angry, he was confused, someone told him to say that. "No one can force a man to bleed honesty," Judy replied quietly. She pulled the third message. By then the courtroom wasn't breathing. She doesn't want a husband. She wants proof she's right. Every day. That was the one. The message that cracked Karen's spine of denial. Her body sagged as if the bones holding up her certainty finally crumbled. "You were supposed to love me," she whispered to him, voice collapsing inward. Her husband's eyes shimmered, not triumphant, not vengeful, just tired. "I tried," he whispered back. "But you loved winning more than us." It was over, but Judy wasn't finished. Truth doesn't slap, it dissolves. It seeps. It waits. And then it teaches. She read the final line, the one that built the bridge from his pain to his courage. "I don't want to hate her. I want to remember being loved." Karen didn't sob, she simply broke, quietly, like glass cracking in slow motion. Shoulders folding. Eyes emptying. Ego evaporating. The sound in the room was not cheering, it was awe. Not of victory, but transformation. Because this wasn't humiliation anymore. It was revelation. And that is always louder. Judy placed the papers down with reverence, not triumph. He did not leave you for me, she said softly. He left to find himself before he disappeared entirely. Karen wiped her face with shaking fingers. I just didn't want to be alone. Judy's voice, for the first time since the case began, warmed. There is a difference between holding someone and holding on to someone. One nurtures. One suffocates. Karen stared at her like a child lost in a supermarket, suddenly aware she wasn't angry, she was afraid. Afraid of who she was without someone to battle. Afraid of silence with herself. You made him choose between freedom and you, Judy continued. And when you force that choice, you never win. It wasn't harsh. It wasn't cruel. It was simply true. The husband's voice was barely a breath. I wish you had heard me before a courtroom had to. Karen nodded, small and fragile. I didn't know you were hurting. You never asked, he replied. You only told. Those words, soft, humble, devastating, delivered the final strike. Not Judy. Him. The man who once stayed silent. The man who now spoke without trembling. Not because Judy empowered him, because truth did. That is the power of restraint. Power of dignity. Power of being the quiet one in the storm until the storm runs out of thunder. Judge Judy looked at Karen with unexpected kindness. What you lost today was not a husband. You lost the image you made him carry. Now you have the chance to see him, and yourself, clearly. Karen didn't answer. Couldn't. Silence became her only language. And then it happened, the shift no one predicted. A slow, trembling nod from Karen. Not acceptance of defeat, but acceptance of truth. For the first time, she wasn't fighting. She was listening. 47 seconds. That's all it took. Not to destroy her, but to wake her. Judy quietly closed the envelope. Not like closing a case. Like closing a wound stitched open for years. And in that stillness, the courtroom understood. Sometimes power isn't in the shout. It's in the whisper that outlasts it. If you're still here right now, comment, dignity always wins, down below. Your engagement helps powerful true-to-life stories like this reach more people. The room did not cheer. Not at first. It didn't need to. When truth has just finished speaking, applause feels almost disrespectful, like laughing at a funeral of illusions. Karen stood there, not defiant anymore, not spitting fire or performing misery. She simply existed in silence, a woman who realized too late that she wasn't fighting an enemy, she was fighting the consequences of years she never questioned. Her shoulders drooped, hands no longer clenched, voice reduced to something smaller than she'd ever allow in her world. Was I really, that hard to love, she whispered, not to shame Judy, not to win back her husband, but to understand herself. This time, Judy didn't answer with instruction. She answered with humanity. Love isn't something we strangle to keep, she said quietly. It's something we protect, so it chooses to stay. Karen's lower lip quivered. I thought control meant care. No, Judy replied softly. Control isolates. Care invites. You didn't lose him because you weren't enough. You lost him because you never believed he could stay without being held. The husband wiped his face with the back of his hand, voice raw but honest. I wanted us, but I felt like a hostage to your fear. Karen looked at him, not as property, not as proof, not as a trophy she had to hold onto so the world wouldn't see her cracks, but as a man who had carried the weight of both of their insecurities. Her reply was not loud. It didn't shake walls. It barely left her mouth. I didn't know how to love without trying to own. It wasn't an excuse. It was discovery, too late, yes, but real. For a second, Judy's expression softened even more. Not pity, Judy never pitied. But she understood. She always understood pain better than anger, loss better than attack, truth better than noise. Then maybe, Judy said gently, this is where you learn. Karen nodded. And in that tiny motion was the collapse of ego and the birth of humility. The courtroom, which had come expecting drama, destruction, perhaps entertainment, now watched something different. A woman confronting herself. Judy turned to the husband. And you, she murmured, don't confuse leaving pain for failure. It takes courage to protect your peace. The husband nodded, voice faint but resolute. I didn't want to embarrass her. I just wanted a life without war. Judy's reply was almost a whisper. Peace is not betrayal. A hush swept the room. Not judgment, reflection. Because in that moment, everyone, even those spectating, could see themselves in someone on that floor. The one holding too tight. The one walking on eggshells. The one who stayed silent too long. The one who mistook control for devotion. The one who thought leaving meant failing. Sometimes courtrooms don't hold criminals. Sometimes they hold confessions. Karen lowered her gaze to her hands, the same hands she once used to gesture, accuse, claw for control. Now they looked empty, weightless, shaking slightly. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered to her husband. He swallowed. I know. I just needed someone to see me. Karen nodded again, a nod that admitted she never truly did. Judy didn't gloat. She didn't lean back in victory. She sat upright, humble, as though she never wanted to win, she wanted truth to win. And truth did what judges often cannot, it healed and hurt at the same time. Sometimes losing someone, Judy said softly, teaches us who we must become to deserve someone again. Karen wiped her face, voice barely holding together. And if I never get him back? Judy didn't answer with hope or cruelty. She answered with clarity. Then become someone you would want to stay with. Those watching didn't cheer, not yet. Because this wasn't triumph. It was transformation, fragile and new like skin grown over a wound. Judy finally lifted her gavel, but she didn't strike it yet. She looked at both of them once more, the man who found his voice, the woman who finally heard, and spoke with a softness only earned through battles no camera ever filmed. This case isn't about marriage. It's about learning to treat love as a gift, not a guarantee. A breath passed through the courtroom, collective and cleansing. Then, tap. A single gavel strike. No shock. No anger. Just quiet truth settling in. The show was not over. But the war was. The gavel settled, but the room didn't move. Not for a moment. It was as though the world needed a second to catch up to what it had just witnessed, not a courtroom battle, but a human one. Not a victory over someone else, but a victory over ego, noise, and the impulse to destroy instead of understand. Karen slowly gathered her purse, not the dramatic sweeping motion she arrived with, not a storm. A quiet, almost trembling movement, as if each gesture weighed more now. Her mascara smudged, cheek stained, voice swallowed somewhere between pride and humility, she looked at no one. And yet the room looked at her differently now. Not as a villain, not as a monster, but as someone who finally saw the mirror she had spent years avoiding. For the first time, she didn't look like she wanted to fight the world. She looked like she finally stopped fighting herself. Her husband stood too, but he didn't rush to her, didn't pull away either. They stood in the same space, but not as enemies, nor as partners. Just two people finally seeing each other without noise in between. Sometimes the most painful distance isn't physical. It's when two people stand inches apart but truth stands between them like a wall carved in stone. Take care, he whispered, voice soft, sincere. Karen looked at him, not as proof of her worth, but as someone she once loved and finally heard. You too, she murmured, voice fragile but human again. And then she walked, not defeated, but smaller, quieter, searching. Searching for a version of herself that wasn't built only from fear, possession, and control. A version she might finally be ready to build. The door closed behind her. Only then did the courtroom breathe again. Judge Judy stayed seated, calm, composed, not triumphant. She didn't move like someone who won a battle. She moved like someone who had seen too many and no longer needed to swing to win. She adjusted her glasses, looked down at the paperwork as if she hadn't just quietly dismantled a storm with truth instead of thunder. No raised voice. No victory lap. Just dignity, steady and unshaken. A woman in the front row whispered, "That wasn't a judgment, that was a lesson." Another whispered back, "Some people scream power. She is power." And yet Judy didn't look powerful. She looked grounded. Human. Even a little tired, the kind of tired you earn from carrying wisdom instead of ego. She tapped the desk lightly, not for order, but as if sealing the moment. "Court is adjourned," she said quietly. No roar. No command. Just calm. And calm traveled further than any shout ever could. People didn't rush for the exits. They stood slower, moved softer, like they were leaving a place where something sacred had happened, not dramatic, not loud, but meaningful. Transformative. The husband approached the bench, voice thick. "Thank you." Judy looked at him the way a teacher looks at a student finally ready to learn. "I didn't save you," she replied. "You saved yourself by speaking." He nodded, that truth settling into his shoulders like new armor, not heavy, but earned. And as he walked out, alone but not lost, the room felt lighter. Like something had been released. Like a weight people didn't even know they were carrying dissolved quietly. Sometimes justice isn't revenge. Sometimes justice is clarity. Sometimes the winner is the one who never needed to destroy to prove they were right. Judge Judy gathered her papers, stood, and walked off the bench as the quiet followed her, not submission, respect. Respect not demanded. Respect earned. And in that silence, one lesson lingered in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. You don't lose people because someone steals them. You lose them when you hold fear tighter than love. And dignity, quiet, steady dignity, always wins longer than noise ever could. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about love, control, dignity, or truth, drop a comment saying, "Respect over control." Share this video so more people understand. Real strength isn't winning loudly. It's standing tall silently. And letting truth speak where ego used to shout. Because the world needs more quiet strength, and fewer loud battles.